Okay, good morning once again. Welcome. Good to see you all. Uh, Thanks for joining in, Chaya and Nina. Good to see you. I hope you all are doing well. Let's pray, shall we? Father, we submit this time into your hands. This day, this time of learning, Jesus. Lord, I pray that our hearts would be open as you minister, as you speak, as we learn about youth ministry, about young people. Lord, I pray that we would hear your heart for the younger generation, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so in the last class, we looked at the first three chapters. We looked at by defining who the youth are. We saw that most of the organization define or describe youth with their according to their age. And then how it slowly changed from defining them by their age to what they do. So what they do becomes who they are, is how we see that they've been defined as. And we see that we also saw that youth ministry, leading a youth ministry, you need to have a vision. If you don't have a vision, you will perish. So that was like the summary of the chapter. Okay, you need to have a vision for your ministry. In our context, the youth ministry. And then we concluded with chapter 3, which is identifying your audience. Okay, so in the second chapter, we saw coming up with a vision statement and that I had and the things that I had to ask the Lord and the verses that He led me to. And so that was my vision for the youth ministry. It doesn't mean that if you're leading a youth ministry, it has to be the same. Right? My vision doesn't have to be your vision. Right? It is a guideline, or just to say that you need to have a vision. And then some coming up with a vision statement. Some of the guidelines was mentioned there, keeping it simple, understandable, in line with the main church's vision, etc. Okay, so today we will continue with where we left off from chapter 4. Okay, so again, I just want to reiterate that this is more like just an introduction crash course or a master class in youth ministry, right? And hence, it's a short one. So we will most likely finish it today. I have to finish it today, so but okay. So the chapter 4 is the organizational aspects of it. Like in worship ministry, you would have seen the organizational aspect and the spiritual aspect of leading a ministry. If you remember, I think Pastor Jakes would have taught you that. In organizational aspect, we see the structure of the organization, of the pastoral team. This is very important. Like again, just like vision, you need to have an organizational structure. If you don't have a structure, what happens? Everything falls apart. Like, nobody will know who to go to and speak to. Like, where do I go? If this person is not there, who do I go and speak to next? And then it will be like everybody it's either everybody is following. That means everybody is a leader. Because if everybody is following someone, everybody is a leader. Yes or no? And so there is no proper structure. There is, again, there's no clarity on who's doing what. Are you with me? Right, okay, if I need funds for like the youth camp, who do I go and speak to? If I need XYZ for this youth ministry, who do I go and speak to? What needs to be done, etc. Okay, so that's what I feel like, having an organized structure for your youth ministry is also very important. Okay, and so from I think in your notes you'll be able to see that slightly more clearly. At APC, we have the senior pastor, and as a youth pastor, I was reporting to him directly. Right, there's a structure there, and then there is a bunch of teams that reports to me, or I was overseeing multiple teams. For example, youth ministry operations team. So I'll share more about that as we go into this chapter a little bit, and just give you an example of how do we plan for a youth camp. Okay, I hope I can share that screen. Okay, but yeah. Okay, so we have the youth ministry operational team, the creative team, and we have the core team, core leaders, youth life group team, youth worship coordinators. These are just the five that's mentioned there, and obviously this kind of grew. The structure grew, and so the more clarity is now. I can just look at one title. Let's say youth worship coordinators. Okay, I know they are the worship coordinators for the youth. It's as simple as that. Their whole sole responsibility is to coordinate times of worship for every youth events. It's their responsibility. Now they know what their role is. It's not like, okay, who do I do? What do I do? Nothing. Your role is to coordinate worship. That means you have to make a roster. You have to make sure that the band is available, that the musicians are there and they are available. They've practiced, they've put the song list together. Go. Are you following? So if you don't have a structure, again, like you all said, it's going to fall apart. All right. So what is the role of a pastor? Pastor simply means shepherd, right? A role of a shepherd is to lead, to guide, to protect, right? To nourish and to nurture. That's the role of a pastor. He provides with this overall general vision. And so before I came up with a vision statement for the APC's youth ministry, uh, obviously I had a meeting with my senior pastor and asked, okay, what is your heart for the youth ministry? Because it is he who had the initial heart to have a youth ministry as part of the church and then decided to hire me, isn't it? And so it's not that I was there from day one and youth ministry just fell in my lap. No, youth ministry started or was initiated as a desire in my senior pastors. And so he obviously has a heart for the younger generation. And me, as a youth pastor who's reporting to him, had to understand his desire. Because if I don't, again, miscommunication, no clarity, and I will take off on a tangent which might not be in line with him or her. Are you with me? And so it's very essential that if you're reporting to a senior leader, that you have a constant meeting with that person, at least the initial meeting, to understand what is your heart for this ministry. If it's a children's ministry, worship ministry, youth ministry, doesn't matter. What is your heart? Where do you see what you want the young people of our church at APC to represent and do? Right? And so then he took a paper out and then and he, yeah, as he always does, so and he wrote this thing is okay, no, I kind of have a blueprint to build upon, like to kind of build around at least. Are you following? Okay, so that is the role of a pastor. He provides a general vision, direction, motivation, etc. The role of a youth pastor. Youth pastor, unlike other pastoring responsibilities, can be a little intimidating. Why? Because you are pastoring young people, and some of them are great, some of them, like we discussed last time, they just don't want to be there. Like, okay, so you're going to speak now. That kind of an attitude, very cool, or they might not want to listen, they might not want to be there, or like, what are you going to tell me that I don't already know, at least now? So at least 150 young people now, it's increased at APC. What do I do? It seems so intimidating, right? Like this big Goliath in front of me. But um, I didn't have to complicate it. Just understand that I am a youth pastor. Pastoring simply means, again, I had to remind myself, it's just shepherding, guide them, be there for them, protect them, nourish them. That's it. It's not complicated. It's not a title to become a hero, or for them to worship you as one, or etc., etc. It's you are simply there for them. My responsibility is to guide them, lead them. There's going to be all kinds of young people, and so doesn't matter. So it went from being intimidated to understanding my role is simple. Just be available for them. Just shepherd them. Are you with me? Yes, no? Okay. So, yeah, senior pastor, the youth pastor, and then we spoke about the core team. Um, ha- Having a core team as an extension of yourself is essential. It will save your life, so to speak, because you're not omnipresent, you're not omnipotent. We are not. Uh, if you have 5 locations at APC, I couldn't be there at all 5 locations at every given Sunday, right? But I had the core team from each location to represent me as the leader, right? Represent me uh, to the young people of that location. Are you following? And so having a core team will be very helpful in planning any event or just running the youth ministry together. I would mean there are so many examples from the Bible, right? I mean, even Moses eventually had a team. Jesus had disciples. Take the example of feeding the 5,000, whatnot. Okay, I mean, it says that he didn't start feeding the 5,000 until they were all grouped in 50s. And to make them sit in 50s, he needed the help of the disciples. Can you imagine? Everybody is hungry. It's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 50, sit down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. you know, so Jesus' ministry was organized. It was planned. It just didn't happen. It was not always improvised, so to speak. Right? It's like, okay, let's be spontaneous, let's be prophetic. We've kind of abused those 2 words right now. So we've taken that as an advantage to not plan or an excuse to not plan. Are you following? Okay, so like I think this is something I tell the worship leaders is prepare like it depends on you, lead like it depends on God. So you prepare like it depends on you, but when it's time to lead like it depends on God. And so like you say, Lord, I've prepared, I put together a set list, but I'm lifting it up to you. You do what you do best. I don't want to put you into a box. And when you speak, help me to be sensitive to the leading of your voice. Right? And so I think in the recent times, we've misused or abused moving spontaneous on the prophetic as an excuse to not prepare. And that's just laziness. Okay, so having a strong core team is very essential. Make relationships a point, a very important part of your pastoral role. Relationships between, say, I mean, it's needless to say, it starts with you and God, right? Relationship between you and your senior pastor, relationships at home, and take every touch points, right? Relationship with your friends, relationship with your pastor, your senior pastor, your colleagues, and the young people, of course. Make relationships a point. It's very essential, right? And at least this might come off like an opinion, but I've something that I've learned in my experience in being in ministry is that ministry is not more important than people. What makes a ministry is people. But if you give more importance to the banner of the ministry, then we are kind of missing the point, right? Jesus was all about the people. Again, Jesus is our model. It's we are we are looking to do what he did, how he led. Are you with me? It was all about the people, right? In later chapter, we will see that he always went to places where people were until people started following him. Are you with me? Okay, all right. So make relationships a point, which is in line with the next point, which is lead with care. Another thing that I've learned is the young people, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Okay, young people, this generation, they don't care if you have like 5 PhDs, you can speak in fluent Greek and Hebrew, know the Bible inside out, back of your hand, whatever. They don't care. They don't care how much you know until they know that you care, how much you care. It again stems from just being available, being there for them. Small things like knowing them by their name, it's a good start, right? And then, for example, let's say I had a chat with Nina last say a month ago, and our last conversation was about you were preparing for an interview. And then I see you a month later, I've been in touch, and if I start that conversation from where I left off, like, hey, how did the interview go? It's like, and I've been told this, oh, you actually remember what we spoke. And that's important to them. It's like he actually listened to me. And so it makes them feel valued. When someone is paying attention to what you're saying, and you feel like, wow, this guy is actually listening. Are you with me? Right. There's one exercise that I used to do with the young people. But we have very few people in this room, and then some of them online. But an activity that you can try, okay, in your youth meetings is, say if there are 20 people, 20 young people, or 10, 12, whatever, right? Break them into two groups. Okay, like count them off into one, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, like that, and ask one of the groups, say group one to go out, and group two to stay inside the class and in the room, and and uh, and just tell the group two, like who is in the class, to say, okay, I am going to go out and tell the group one people to come in and start talking to you. Just keep talking, like without giving a gap, break, any topic, doesn't matter. So I'm going to tell the group one to come in and start talking to you. And each one will have a partner. And what I will tell group two people to do is absolutely ignore everything they speak. Don't even treat them like they exist. It's super funny. Like, imagine young people, like 40, 50 people. Okay, one person is just talking and talking, and the other person is like, like don't care kind of a thing. And then I asked the person who was talking, how did they feel like when this person was not paying attention to them? Like some are getting angry, some are getting, is like, what is this? Like no value. Are you following what I'm saying? Right? It's a nice activity that you can try it out. But they feel valued basically, and that's how they get to know that they are important, that they mean something to you. And as soon as young people know that they mean something to you, like they will defend you with their lives, so to speak. Like if you win their heart once, it's very hard to lose it. Like, I mean, if they, yeah, you get what I'm saying, right? So make relationships a point. Lead with care. Don't lead from a place of authority, and that's another place thing that we will look at. Okay, and the last thing is mentoring young people and rely upon God. Rely upon God. Now, this point, as I was preparing or writing this course material, I was reminded how I was so dependent on God in the first year of my youth ministry, and I was not as dependent on Him in the second year, because there was a sense of arrogance that's creeped in. I'm not proud about it, but I'm just making myself vulnerable, because it was a very, it was not a nice thing that happened. Because in the first year I was like, okay, Lord, I don't know what to do. I've never been a youth pastor before. Tell me what to do. Teach me what to do. I don't know, like what topics do I choose? What themes should I pick for the youth camp, etc. And second year came in, and I was like, I've done this before now. I have 1 year of experience. Are you with me? I can rely on my experience. And God being God in His kindness and in His mercy is like a gentle nudge. So you don't need me now. He's so good. And in a way that He even teaches you a lesson, or reminds you of something that you've forgotten. Uh, I mean, I was arrogant with 1 year of experience. Okay. But there's something beautiful about relying upon God day after day, month after month, in leading life, yes, but in leading a ministry. Like, for example, yesterday he would have told you to strike the rock. Today he doesn't want you to strike the rock. But are you listening? Right? So rely upon God. Are you all with me? Okay. Cool. And the rest of the chapter, I've just mentioned some of the roles and responsibilities of the core team of APC. Had to handle. You can go through it later, and then some of the administrative plans on when the monthly youth meeting used to happen. MYM is called monthly youth meetings. Because I could not be at all the locations, I had to plan in a way that I could be there in all the locations at least once a month. And so, second Sunday at APC, I would be at APC South. Third Sunday of the month, I'd be at APC Central. Fourth Sunday, I would either be at APC East or APC North. That I would be a little flexible there. So, you're following, right? Like it's in chapter 4. And some of the other events that we used to do is pit stop. We call it as for the combined youth meeting, where youth of all the 5 locations would come together at least once in 2 months or once in 3 months. So we call that pit stop, and we had youth camps, youth retreats, life groups, youth missions, campus elevate, which is we go to school campuses, college campuses to just minister. So yeah, these were the few things that used to happen, and it still happens actually with under the leadership of Pastor Sam Matthews. Are some of the events that happens in the youth ministry part of. Okay, any questions regarding this chapter? Any thoughts that you'd like to add or share? Jachin, Nina, Shiv Kumar. Yeah, okay, Prince. Oh, sorry. You were saying something? Yeah.
Yeah. So you said about your life experience. So in the first year, as you gain knowledge, then the second year you were trying to do something of your own, and the Lord convicted you.
Yes.
So, like, was there like during your quiet time, or like how
Yes.
was this conviction passed, and how things changed after that? Because it's so easy for all of us, in fact, to be very careful of God's voice, and because it's God's work, so it's not us. So to build upon that same thing and be consistently aware to lean on.
Yes. Yes, it happened in the quiet time, Jachin, when I was alone with God, and yeah, I remember the room as well. I remember it was an afternoon
Mm,
as well. Yes, and that was a very valuable lesson, and I think it's the lesson is very simple. Is like Proverbs chapter 3. It says, you know, trust in the Lord in all your ways and lean not on your own understanding.
mm,
And I think experience can be our friend and our enemy. In a sense, that was my thing. Is experience can cause you to be arrogant or
mm,
condescending even, because you can say, I have 15 years of experience. Who are you to tell me what to do in ministry?
mm,
Are you with me?
mm.
Whereas we forget the root meaning of the word ministry. Minister is simply the root meaning is to be a cup bearer.
Yes, yes.
It's a, yeah, to be a cup bearer like Nehemiah was.
Mm,
And if we lose, and it all comes down to keeping the wonder of Jesus. Like if you lose the wonder of Jesus, and if you forget that the ministry itself, what you're doing is, if you forget that it's not about Jesus, then you've lost the plot immediately. And I think, yeah, and that's what keeps the fire burning, the passion going, year after year, leading any kind of ministry is, why are you doing what you're doing, and who are you doing it for? That will always keep you on track. Who are you
mm,
doing it for? Run this race, keep run it with perseverance, for he is our reward. Like to hear him say that, well done, good and faithful servant. So
thank you.
yes,
Thank you
yeah,
so much, Master.
you're most welcome. Prince, you were saying
Like you said, like choosing ministry is always over like
people,
people,
people over
not
ministry.
people over
Yeah.
ministry. And you said like not we should not choose the banner
Mhm.
over people.
Mhm.
So can you just give a little insight like how it can happen, like any examples to identify it?
Oh, okay. So,
Like
um,
how we are choosing banners for people, how we can identify it. We are giving more importance to banners to them. What are
yeah.
those
So it's both ways. It's like because of a banner, you will give more importance to a person, and because of a banner, you will also ridicule the person. Like it works both ways. So because, so for example, you may have heard uh, of a certain ministry that a certain leader is like this, and so what happens is you would generalize everything that is happening in that part of ministry is as wrong because of that one person, which I don't think is right. Right, you can't be right, and then also because of a banner, and there could be a good leader, but because of, say, let's say a few leaders and people might not be a good example, you tend to look at that whole ministry as bad. Like you completely negate everything what the Lord is doing in and through them, regardless of people. So and that is because of a banner, right? I mean, there are a lot of banners that I can use right now, but I'm refraining from taking names. Yeah, I don't think it's right to take names, but yeah, and also in terms of conflicts, right? Especially in ministry, we've seen that when I've seen conflicts happen and also reconciliation happen. So one conflicts happen because two ministries or ministers from two ministries decided to clash. Like, for example, let's say, like, why are you taking people from my church, right? Uh, Versus if there's a misunderstanding, I've seen leaders take an initiative to go and reconcile, to get some clarity. Because hey, my relationship, let's say for example, I'm a pastor of a church, Anand is a pastor of his church and whatnot. We've been friends, we've known each other, and because maybe something has happened, right, and I'm me without assuming, I'm going to meet with him, and then because I value our friendship. If I didn't value our friendship or relationship, I wouldn't bother. I would assume, I would say, okay, this is who he is. He's stealing people from my church. How could he do this? I know we've been friends for so many years. How could he do this? And I'll stop talking. But I'll continue doing ministry. Right? And so that's really what I mean is people build ministry. It's not the other way around. When I was the youth pastor, a member care, it was not official title, but then it's like a constant follow up, keeping in touch with them. That's one of the things what I learned in say my experience in call center. One of the parameters how a call would be, I don't want to say judged. A call would be rated. Quality control is if you personalized a call. That means if I go through the entire call without mentioning your name or addressing your name as Mr. Anand and whatnot, I get marked down because it was important that I personalized the individual in the call. Mr. Anand, how are you doing? Is everything okay? That's one thing. And the other thing is, so in a day, I used to take a average of 120 calls. Average, okay? Now, it will be time for me to log out. It will be my 125th call. My 125th call. But for the customer, it will be their first call. And so I can't treat it as my 125th call. I have to give the same importance that I gave the first customer to the 125th customer as well. And so that is what is it? It's called serving in our context. Regardless of like how many young people there are, your thing is to serve them and serve them well. And so when you personalize them, when you engage with them, when you remember the conversation that you've had with them, when you remember what they are going through, and just it all matters, and that's care basically. Yeah.
One more
Yeah.
question, Anna. Like, as like this is also from last class. So, we are talking like some people when we conduct some meeting, like some youth event, something. People come and some people just come, they don't want to be there, they were dragged by their friends and someone, and they'll
Okay.
be lost,
Okay.
completely disinterest.
Right.
And maybe because the topic they are not connected to it,
Sure.
what are the some ways like we can make them engaged, like if
Right.
they're
Okay.
lost, how we can get them back?
So first thing to do, so Prince's question is, okay, there will be some young people who come to youth meetings who are not interested, who might be disengaged and whatnot. Your first thing should never be to ridicule them. It's like, "Oh, what, you're not listening, you should be very happy that they are there. That on a Saturday evening they could be anywhere in the world partying, doing all kinds of nonsense, but they chose to be there. Be very grateful for that. They will come around. Right. I mean, I didn't start attending youth meetings because I was a saint. I loved music. I got to play the drums. That's why I went to youth ministry. I started attending youth ministries because there was an opportunity for me to play the drums. I like playing drums. I like music. And slowly attending meetings after meetings after meetings. 2 decades later, I became the youth pastor. So you never know, right? Like who will turn out to be like it's like keep digging deeper. Like gold is not there out there in the dirt, right? You have to dig deep. And so give them chance. You need patience. Just work with them. Okay. Yeah. So I would say be patient. Don't ridicule them at all. Like don't be quick to that. I think because you feel disrespected that they are not listening to you. They're like, what is this? I prepared all night for this sermon, all this, PPT and Canva, everything, all this design. It took me so long to put this content together without the help of Chat GPT, and you're not even listening to me. Like, because we feel disrespected when they don't listen, when they're disengaged. And also your heart is for them to receive what you're sharing. Are you with me? So there's both sides to it. But it's okay. Like if you have 10 points, I'm pretty sure at least 1 point would hit their heart. The seed is planted and you continue to water it, continue to nurture it, nourish it, walk with them, right? So events, we have this notion that only events can change life, right? Encounters can happen at an event, right? For example, you might give your life to Jesus at a youth camp, but it is after what happens after the youth camp. Are they discipled? Right? Like Peter said in the Mount of Transfiguration, Lord, let's just pitch our tent here and stay here. But ministry happens in the valley. Mountaintop experiences are great, like events, but everything, like the rubber meets the road in the valley. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Yeah. Not very personal, but yeah.
Personal in the sense like they should know that we care about
Yeah.
them. So like there should be a boundaries also, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think? What should be the boundaries as a youth pastor?
Boundaries can look very different to different individuals, Anand. So, like, I mean, it's like I have my inner circle because they know a little bit more about me than the outer circle. But that doesn't mean I'm not good friends with the outer circle people. It's just that I choose to reveal to them how much I want to reveal to them. Are you with me? And it takes years of investment and like if I have a best friend, if I have like say 4 or 5 best friends, whatever, is because they've invested their time and sweat and emotions and anger and joy, like all kinds of things, and so they've come from the outer circle to the inner circle, right? It takes years of that. But when I say you have to lead with care, is not that everybody becomes your best friend. It's that they know that you care for them. That's it. Like yeah, I mean, you don't need to know their favorite number and all that kind of a thing, but it's okay. But boundaries are set, and especially when for me that I need to be aware of, the guidelines at APC when you're uh, with regards to the opposite sex, right? I would, even my core team members, like the a female core team, women in the core team, I would not message them or ask them to do or call them after a certain point in the evening. If I want certain work to get done, unless it's extremely urgent in say times like youth camps and like because we are working around the clock and whatnot, I would reach out. But then it's just I stop at say 9 o'clock or before that. Nothing beyond. So those are the boundaries that I set, and I also let them know like please don't call me after this thing. I will not answer. And so initially, when you are creating certain boundaries, there will be misunderstanding in a sense like, oh, see, he's telling me not to call him and all of that. But slowly, it'll become a culture. They'll get to know, okay, this is how he or she functions. It's their boundary, and it's very healthy. Yeah, and none of the boundaries will say that I don't care about you. Yeah. Okay. Challenges in youth ministry. Let's look at chapter 5, right? Challenges in youth ministry. And I wanted to look at it in two parts. One is the challenges that youth leaders face and the challenges that the youth are facing in this day and age. Okay. So the number one challenge that I see a lot of young leaders facing, which causes premature ending of their ministry, is impatience. Impatient. That means young leaders want results yesterday. Are you with me? Like everything that is there in their heart and their vision, it should have already happened yesterday. And so there's no like patience, like but in and the way I looked at it as, you need to look at youth ministry as a marathon versus a 100-meter dash. Okay, so I was reminded of one of the incident in my school days in how so I was in athletics, but I was a sprinter, like a 100-meter dash, like, or maybe even 200 meters. I was pretty fast because I was lean and and I could, but I did not have the stamina for a marathon. Like marathon is, it could be like minimum of 10 kilometers minimum, and it can go up to 50 kilometers and all that, right? And so and then an event came where school kind of held a marathon race, and they said, okay, the news channel is going to cover it and you're going to be on TV. I was like, sign me up. I'm going to be in that. Okay, sign me up. And then there I was, like, I mean, it was open to the public as well. Like I think they were raising something for charity or whatever during the Kargil war. Yeah, I remember that. And so I went, I stood, and they said, go. I started running, and then 200 meters, full gas out, like all out of gas, like, oh man, I can't run. I need water. Where's glucose? Nothing. So the thing is, I did not have the understanding or the maturity or the training to see the difference between a 100-meter sprint versus a marathon. Because both the athletes who does a marathon versus who runs a sprint, who's a sprinter, they train very differently. A marathon runner will train in a higher altitudes, where oxygen is less, just to train their body to keep running long distances. The way their diet is different, everything, the way they approach the race is different. It's like initially they'll be slow and they'll pick up the pace towards the very end. It's amazing. Versus a 100 meters dash sprinter, it's all about speed. Like, you build your calves, you build your thighs, your lower body stamina, strength, and your resist, everything. And you'll be done like what, 15 seconds, except for Usain Bolt. Are you with me? And so when we start to look at ministry, if you look at ministry as a 100 meters dash, like, oh man, I wanted to do this, this didn't happen. I'll give up. Versus if you look at it as a marathon, take it day by day, be patient, and slowly inculcate change. Slowly, start seeing what you want to see. And that will keep you in the long run, right? I have run the race, I have kept the faith. Like, you can't keep a faith in one day. It's years. Like, it doesn't matter to me if you say I'm on fire for the Lord today. Come and tell me 20 years from now, and that will matter to me, right? What you say to me in this classroom, yeah, it's good. Yes, like, wow, awesome. But come and tell me the same thing 20 years from now, then I will say, like, wow, this guy really meant what he said. Are you following? And so one of the challenges which I would encourage you to avoid, which can be a pitfall in your role as leaders, is be patient. If you're not, you will just quit prematurely. Are you following? Okay. All right. So impatience is one of the first challenges for youth leaders. The second thing is time management. Like, some of us, quite honestly, can't even spell time management. Like, we don't know what is time, we don't know what is management. Like, what is time management? Time is there 24 hours, It's like, but no, if as a leader, okay, guys, look at me. So as a leader, especially as a youth pastor, and if you have like 100 young people or even 50 young people or 20 young people, if you don't learn to manage your time will be managed for you by the people around you. Okay. So there's a wonderful book by an author called Cal Newport. He has a book called Deep Work. I would. It's not a Christian book, but I would encourage you to do that. Read that if you can. When it's because we don't know how to manage time. As I think it's an Indian thing, that we are very hesitant to say no. Right? It's like, if I say no, what will that person think? And the other person also be like, see, I went and asked this person. The person said no. you know it's kind of, we've been conditioned not to say no. We've been conditioned to think that if we say no, the people will be upset. Also, if we say no, it's like this word called FOMO, fear of missing out, that they call it. So it's like, oh man, you know what if I miss this opportunity? What if it goes? The point here is, it's about prioritizing. I'm not saying simply say no for everything. It's, if you've prioritized something, let's say, like, you've told your son that you're going to come and pick him up from school, you straight true to that word. Like, even if you get an opportunity to speak to 100 young people or whatnot, but I have given my word to someone before I gave my word, before I confirmed with you, and so therefore I'm sorry, I can't take you up on this appointment. Are you with me? So that is from the ministry perspective. Let's say organizationally, inside the organization, I have colleagues, right? I have the media team, the IT team, the administration team, all these kind of teams. Well, suddenly someone from some team will come and say, Pastor, I need this. Can you do this for me? Can I get this from you? Well, I'm in the middle of this thing. It should be okay for me to say, hey, I'm working on something right now. I will get to it as soon as I finish it. So, but what happens if I didn't know how to manage my time? It's like, oh, you want this? Okay, sure. While I was working on, let's say, course content or a sermon, the flow is lost, right? And so that will become a culture, a norm for people to think that I can approach this person anytime, and I will get instant response of like them helping me. Versus, like, you say, hey, I'm working on something right now. This is my time. I'm, like, when I initially took over, joined APC as staff, I was the associate worship pastor and the youth pastor. And so I divided my day into halves. That is, first half I will focus on youth ministry, and the second half into worship ministry, like everything that needed my attention. Because it's very easy to get intertwined. Like, okay, 10 minutes or this, oh man, worship roster. Oh, this I have to, it's very easy. And so that's what that book will kind of talk about. Deep work is how all these well established entrepreneurs or successful people in life, how they set aside and like time just for one thing. Like they go off somewhere, put off their phone, completely disconnected from the civilization, and all they do is just focus on that one thing. Like, it's about learning to manage time, because if you don't learn to manage your time, people will manage your time for you. Are you with me? So learn to manage your time. And finally, discouragement. Um, in ministry as pastors, discouragement will come your way very often. Very often. Like it could be, there could be so many reasons, and I've mentioned a few there. It's a lack of respect can lead to discouragement, sleep deprivation because of a new baby. That was the season I was in. Conflict and confrontation, miscommunication and misunderstanding, too many calls and emails to return to, criticism, feedback. Okay, youth who are difficult to like, a core team not cooperating, failure to please everyone, failure to please anyone. When you receive an email of disappointment, okay, an email of disappointment from a parent or from any, your boss or whatever, is like, open the laptop and it's like, I thought this would be like this, I thought you were like this, I'm very disappointed with what you've done. Full world will come crashing down. One day you thought like you're the best youth pastor, next day you're down there. It's like Elijah moments. One day he's slaying down like 400 people, the next day he wants to take his own life. Discouragement is another reason where young leaders quit prematurely. And we see that, God telling Joshua in Joshua chapter 1, at least between verse 6 and verse 9, three times he says, do not be discouraged, do not be dismayed, do not be discouraged, do not be dismayed. And between verse 7 and the thing is, he tells it at least three times not to be discouraged and be dismayed, but not once does he tell how to be encouraged. Okay, but in verse 8, he gives like a clue. He slips in like a piece of paper clue and say, but don't let the book of the law depart from your heart. That was enough. Okay, that means everything what I need to be encouraged is there in his book, in his word. You see that? Okay, so yeah, that's what I want to kind of encourage you all with. At least pause this section is be patient, manage your time. Manage your time. Make it a habit. It's a discipline to learn to manage your time. Great leaders, successful leaders, learn to manage their time. Our times right now are managed by our phones. What do I mean by that? The phone tells us when to sleep. The phone tells you what to do for the first 30 minutes after you wake up. Keep scrolling. You get what I'm saying? It's like, in a way, I'm saying, okay, you don't get to manage my time. I will manage your time. It starts with the smallest things, right? It starts with the smallest of the things for it to become a habit. All right, we'll pause here. We'll continue from where we left off in the next class. Okay. Thank you.